The obsession didn't begin with world titles or Olympic glory. It began in rec centre in Maryland with no ring, one speed bag and a cracked dresser mirror. The program was not exactly the state of the art. There was no actual ring and there would not be one until 1976. Our practices were held on 4 mats spread out on a hard wooden floor, which made maintaining a proper balance important, and they were cut short to make room for basketball. We used only one speed bag, 2 heavy bags and a cracked dresser mirror for shadow boxing. The next Joe Louis wasn't coming out of this dive. And yet this is where Ray fell completely in love with preparation, not with boxing but with the daily process of getting better. I relished every aspect of this process, from the 5-mile runs in the dark and the cold to the jabs I threw from one end of the court to the other to the consistent pounding of the speed and heavy bags. After school, I couldn't wait to get to the gym to see if I was any sharper with my punches or quicker with my footwork. I also developed my own special workout routine in which I sometimes ran to school instead of taking the bus. The other kids assumed I was crazy, and maybe I was, but I needed to believe the extra effort would pay off someday. So what drove him wasn't the natural talent. He'd failed at basketball, track and wrestling. He tried all these sports. Boxing was the first thing he was actually good at, and that made him obsessive about it. What drove me was the power it instilled, the sense that I was in control. Instead of being a victim in the ring for the first time in my life, I felt I could conquer any force. Strange, isn't it? The ring is where men try to do great harm to one another and where I felt the safest. So I've already touched this in the last episode, and I won't dive too deep into it here, but Ray came from background of violence everywhere around him. Palmer Park, where he grew up, it was violent on the streets. It was violent in his own household with his mum, against his dad. His dad would cheat on his mum, she'd get angry, and his dad would whip him and his brothers. So all he knew was violence. So when he got good at boxing, he started noticing this power and control that he got a buzz off of it. So his coach Dave Jacobs had a projector at his house, and he would show the boys footage of Willie Pep, Jersey Joe Walcott, Shirley Robinson. These are all legendary greats of boxing, and they would break them down one by one and try and figure out what made each of them great. And Ray was absorbing all of this as a kid. Long before he had opponents worth even studying, he was already building this habit of watching, analysing and learning. And again, I speak about this in every athlete. For every athlete, they have an obsession with the craft that starts early and it never shuts off. And it reminds me of Maradona. He described the same pool as a boy in Fiorito. We would always be there in the Potrero, running after the ball. Saturdays and Sundays were spent like that all day long. Weekdays too, but only from 5 o'clock, because during the day I had to go to school. Everything I did, every step I took was because of the ball. If the torta sent me on an errand, I would take with me anything that resembled a ball. It could be an orange or scrumpled up paper or cloths, and I would go up into the steps onto the bridge that crossed the railway, hopping on one foot, the right one, tack, tack, tack. That's how I walked to school as well.